Hello, I'm Mantastic'c and Fantastic, and today I want to talk about the That Time I Got Reincarnated into a Slime collaboration, which is now in full swing in North America. So, before I dive into the cards that I find are more notable and or valuable, I want to just talk about the game state as a whole and how we're starting to gravitate much more heavily towards collaboration events where the best cards are naturally going to be found in these collaborations, like at higher rarities or only that are not monster exchangeable. You have to purchase them potentially, but you might need multiple copies, or they're middle rarity cards which you actually have to roll, who probably have bad rates as well. So not only we have that aspect, but we also have the fact that we now have these special collaboration solo mode badges. And prior to these, basically the default was always utilizing the plus 15% HP because having health is the most important resource or metric at this point in time, because if you can't survive these large incoming hits, you're not going to clear the dungeon. So these collaboration badges are way better by comparison because you get the 15% health for cards from that same collaboration, and then 15% RCV, and then 50% attack bonus. That's a colossal stat increase for those collaboration cards, which means I feel like at this point in time, you want to save up lots and lots of magic stones to roll heavily in a particular collaboration event in order to kind of like catch back up into power creep, so to speak, because power creep does exist. Periodically we get new cards that are better than the previous ones, but if you keep rolling in every single event, you might only be making marginal improvements, but you're not going to be able to go super deep into any one respective event. Whereas if you are patient enough and just skip events and then roll heavily in only, say, every other one or every third event, you can get hopefully most of the cards from that event, and then in turn you can populate an entire team with cards from the collab, utilize the collaboration badge. A good example for myself is Fantastic'c did quite well in the Gundam or the Gung-Ho alternate journey event where I have Excalibur and then enough cards to populate a team. So I can utilize the special badge and I get a significant boost increase, so to speak, overall. Like my damage output is 50% better than your team is going to be because I have the badge and enough cards that are from that event to make it worthwhile. And in the case of Slime, the exact same logic will apply. And the issue is, I feel that compared to alternate journey, Slime has significantly more bad and or low value cards in this event that make it quite challenging to roll heavily here, in all honesty, because I think for 10 magic stones it's grossly overpriced. I feel like it could have been 7 and a bit more respectable, because there's so many low rarity stuff that clog up the machine that provide minimal value that it's just kind of frustrating. So basically what I've been trying to say for the past 3 minutes is that if you have lots of magic stones and you like the cards in this event, it can be worthwhile to roll heavily. But on the other hand, if you only have, say, like 100 or maybe 120-ish so magic stones, not that many in the grand scheme of things, it's only 10 plus rolls, you're not going to get enough value because you need to roll multiple duplicates of high rarity cards, multiple cards in this event to populate the team. You need to a monster exchange potentially 10 collab cards for this Rimuru and Veldora in order to get that special badge or get lucky rolling them. Point of the matter is, it's incredibly costly to build teams nowadays from collaborations, especially when they're 10 magic stone events. So with that being said, if you have lots of magic stones, you think the teams and the cards featured here are appealing enough, roll heavily. Don't roll gently like I did on my main account. I only did 10 magic stone pulls plus the 3 free rolls, so only 13 times. Got absolute trash to show for it, of course, and if I had rolled more, there's a good chance I could build stuff. On the other hand, my mom, who had more magic stones than me, I told her to roll at least 20 to 25 times total, and she picked up enough cards to build these collaboration teams, so she's going to have a big jump in terms of power creep potential overall. So that being said, let me take a look at the cards that I find are a bit more valuable overall. So starting with this Rimuru, I can't pronounce any names, and Veldora. They are the card that locks the special collaboration badge. So you need to get this card to get the collaboration badge to truly unlock the full potential in this event. And amusingly enough, they are an incredibly strong card in their own right, but ideally you need 2 copies, which is terrifying because that's 10 collab cards exchanged for 1. That's a lot of rolling you're going to have to do. But why do you want 2 copies? It's because of this cycling active skill. So it's a 3-turn cooldown, then a 1-turn cooldown. So essentially it's 4 turn cooldowns to cycle through the whole thing. And if you have 2 copies, you are able to basically utilize one of them every single turn. So looking at this active skill, it is non-transforming, it's cyclic in nature, which means you can inherit hastes or delays on top of it to get yourself transformed as necessary, and then you have a 3-turn cooldown that's just easy enough to charge back up. And with this 3-turn cooldown, you get 1 column of water, 1 column of heart orbs, and then you also get 1.5 times max HP, which is essentially a 50% bulk increase. It's a big deal, because now you don't necessarily have to run a looping shield. Looping shields usually only give 35% damage reduction. This is a 50% health increase, which is a more effective health gained overall. So right away, you can tell that this is a big deal, and this lasts for 2 turns. And then after that, on a 1-turn cooldown, you get to unlock the board like before. You get a column of water, a column of hearts, and then for a single turn, you get 2 times movement time, and RCV, and attack. So with 2 of these cards, you have a permanent plus 50% more health. You have 50% of the time an attack, RCV, and a movement time buff, and orb generation. Pretty spectacular overall, and they work best on the Tempest card. So this is a card that you have to get lucky and roll or purchase for like 40 odd dollars Canadian, I think. And if you are able to acquire this card, they are one of the best leaders in the game. They are also going to be one of the best subs in their other form. You want multiple copies of this card. So after 37 tremendously long turns, they will transform. And then this is the form that becomes a spectacular leader when you change the sub attribute to water. They will have 410 combos. They have levitation, so big damage output. They have aging, which is a massive stat increase in longer dungeons. And if you get the Synchro Awakening, it can be quite powerful. I don't see the Synchro Awakening in here for some reason. I'm just going to take a look at it on a different screen really quickly. But it can be the Moon Synchro Awakening. So it's obviously in Moon-based dungeons, even better. So why are they so great? They have a 1-turn cooldown that gives them a self-damage cap to 7 billion. So potentially 21 billion, like, across all their attributes when you change the subcolor. And then it creates 6 water orbs exactly, and then 20% health healed. So yes, it doesn't make heart orbs, but you use them in conjunction with Rimuru and Veldora, you get potentially 11 water orbs and 5 heart orbs every single turn. And that's a big deal because you can match 3x3 boxes, you can match separate water combos, you can do basically whatever you want. And that extra healing is never going to be a bad thing when your health bulk was actually increased overall because of Veldora. And then for the leader skill, you want to be water-based attribute. You get 60% damage reduction when there's 7 or more combos, which is always doable. And then you get bonus attack and combo count increasing for each match of 3 or more connected water orbs. So for every set of water you match, you get more and more damage. Scaling leader skills are kind of the way to like push through extremely high super gravity dungeons. So you have the bulk. You actually have bonus healing as well. You have health, you have flat health to, you know, not die to those spawns where they have on-death animation and then a preemptive on the falling floor. You still probably will survive. So you've got big damage output that scales exponentially. You have bulk, you have flat health, you've got everything going on with orb generation. The problem is you need to own lots of these high rarity cards from this event to truly take off, and you want to use the slime badge. And then amusingly enough for their team, aside from the 2 Rimurus and Veldoras and themselves, you want to actually have them in their evolved form. And amusingly enough, this evolved form is going to become an incredibly strong, long-lasting sub, I feel, for the foreseeable future for many teams because they've got great damage output of 410 combos with a levitation. They have aging, but it's the active skill that's a 7-turn cooldown that gives 2 turns of damage and attribute absorption cancellation, which is something we need in every given dungeon. Gives them a damage cap increase to 8 billion, so more damage is always a great thing. And then you also remove a single shield. And at this point in time, there are multiple spawns in endgame dungeons that feature these shield mechanics, and being able to completely destroy one immediately will save you time, and it makes it so you spend less turns on the respective spawn, which means you're less likely to die, and you can just blitz through content ever so quickly. It's probably going to be the next step in power creep where you're going to need to have shield breaking active skills, because you may run the risk of never being able to kill it in time and then just dying to like executions or something along those lines. I'm not a big fan of that direction because we started seeing like damage absorption years and years ago becoming basically mandatory to bring, and now it's at the point where you can't enter a dungeon without bringing damage absorption cancellation because there is no way to control damage. So because we're starting to get tools to deal with these shields, my biggest fear is if you don't have any of these shield breaking active skills, we may end up not being able to clear content because the spawns are just too durable, their shields are too big, or their timers are so short in terms of how many turns you need to kill them, that it's going to become a problem. So to a certain extent, you can hedge your bets, so to speak, by, acquiring this card and having a solution, because we already need these damage absorptions and attribute absorption cancellation active skills. Tying into another mechanic that's new and probably going to be lethal in the future makes them extremely valuable. Unfortunately, incredibly hard to roll, but good news is if you only get a single copy, you definitely can abuse them in that form here. Their weapon assists are obviously going to be nice, but I think it's challenging to not utilize them as a leader or as a sub when they're at the height of their power creep, so to speak. And I guess amusingly enough, their weapon assist could be good for their own teams, which is kind of the trend when you think about it, because Rimuru and Veldora's weapon assist is extremely good for their own teams, because you want the water sub-attribute, the 3x3 box, the team HP, skill boost, skill bind resist, and the movement time. It's never going to be a bad thing, because they don't actually come with skill bind resist on these cards, which is going to be obviously alarming if your team is comprised mostly of these types of cards. So skill binder, point is you need these high rarity cards to function. And then for the other exchangeable card that takes 7 instead of 10, they are strong. Veldora and Rimuru are obviously great if you're using these blue-based teams, but if you only have enough fodder for one trade, you can make some arguments that their weapon assist of Dragon Knuckles is incredibly strong, because you give it to a card whose attack set you don't care about, and then you get 2 skill boosts, 2 team HPs, 2 team RCVs, and 4 turns of haste. If you don't have the Gyoko pot or vase, this is a wonderful alternative, incredibly powerful and strong for cards that don't deal damage. So for myself, I rolled, like I said, 13 times. I'll get a couple more from the login stamps. I'm most likely possibly going to exchange for this because it's never a bad weapon assist to have, and I don't feel like I don't have enough fodder to even get 10. I don't even know if I have enough fodder to get 7 because I don't necessarily want to give up my single copy of some cards, but point of the matter is it's a strong weapon assist if you rolled heavily in this event and you have excess fodder to trade away, but I would prioritize the Rimuru and Veldora first for the special badge to unlock these powerful leaders' full potential. And speaking of powerful leaders, Nava is arguably one of the best leaders in the game. So upon entering a dungeon, you have 37 turns to transform, which is obviously painful, but once you do transform, you have a 4-turn cooldown, which means technically with 4 copies, so yours, 3 plus a friend, you can have the perfect system. And this perfect system is outrageously strong if you're lucky enough somehow, because you get 2 turns of 2 times attack for the owning cards, so every turn, if you have 4 of them, 2 of them are going to be doing bigger damage with a 12 billion damage cap. So potentially 24 billion from main and sub attribute on 2 cards every single turn. And the other ones are going to be pumping up big damage as well, because 4-10 combos and Levitate does large amounts of damage. And then you unlock the board and you create 9 fire, 9 dark, and 9 hearts over any existing orb, and also remove a single barrier or shield. Again, this is power creep. If you have 4 of these, you ignore shields for the most part, and that's going to be a big deal. And then because this active skill generates you 9 of these elements, you can make 2 boxes of whatever color you want. It could be red, it could be dark, it could be hearts for that super follow-up attack. Point is, you have multiple matching pattern options because your leader skill, all you want to do is match those 3 elements to get plus 8 combos and 10 million auto follow-up attack damage. And you also have an RCV multiplier, so it's incredibly easy to heal up. You are incredibly bulky at 25 times effective health. It's just an incredibly easy and powerful to use leader. I don't have this card. I won't be able to know exactly how great it is, but from what I've seen, it seems utterly spectacular if you have the full system. But if you don't have the full system, all is not lost, thankfully. Benimaru is a pretty great alternative, alternative if you don't have the full system to close the orb generation loop, because remember, you need 4 copies to make this orb generation loop close. With Benimaru, if you think about say Bartender Toka, this is essentially like Grassus for the Bartender Toka teams, because You have a 2-turn orb generator who makes the correct orbs of 5 fire, dark, and hearts. You're not getting that 3x3 box every turn, which is obviously going to be a bit of a drawback, but at the same time, at least you have a way to generate the orbs to close your system, because rolling 1 Nava is hard to do already. Getting 3 is extremely difficult. So Banmaru is going to be a great way to close that orb generation loop for yourself. And then you also get an attack buff, which is never a bad thing, and personal damage. And they actually can deal respectable damage with 2 VDPs, 4 10 combos, and they can get the all-stat attribute or a 50% stat bonus, so their stats become quite high. Overall, a strong card to have if you have Nava teams. And then speaking of what else you can populate your team with from this event, because we want to use that badge, is Shyon. Shyon is going to act as a wonderful absorption solution with double team HP, 410 combos, and Heart L for extra bulk, but they are non-transforming, and that's a big deal because you are then able to actually utilize their active skill through an inherit to help yourself transform more easily. This card is nearly identical to Zumbradir, one of the Gung Ho alternate journey cards, but they're dark instead of light, but they don't transform, so I give them more value because they are not transforming, and the fact that they can potentially run more damage output if you can push through the fact that they don't have levitation. But they do have bulk, they do have damage, they do have big stats. They are a wonderful damage absorption solution for dark teams or any team that can utilize dark-based cards. They're going to be a wonderful addition, especially to your Nava teams. You want to use cards from this event. And then another option for this event for your Nava teams is Frey. And Frey is a spectacular cleric. They do have a 6-turn cooldown, which is technically on the longer side, but for 6 turns you get Skyfall Foresight, so you could manufacture extra combos when you couldn't have, and then you have 6 turns of an RCV buff and a movement time buff, so it's a looping buff of movement time and RCV, which is immensely powerful, and you also get to have that full cleric active skill. In terms of subs that last for a prolonged period of time, clerics and absorption cards tend to last the longest. Frey does that spectacularly well with extra zest sprinkled on top. They do have L's as well, so they are able to actually put back your weapon assist after they do get removed. So she's bringing a myriad of valuable effects for your team, and technically with that levitation and double 10 combo, and if they take, say, the 3x3, or VDP Super Awakening, or the 50% stats, they could potentially do meaningful damage in Super Gravity Dungeons. So, for your Nava teams, an incredibly strong cleric overall. And then the fun doesn't stop there, because you could definitely utilize them on other teams, but they become an incredibly strong 7x6 board option if you do leader swapping shenanigans, because they come with this 7x6 leader skill and an incredible active. Overall, high value card that I wish I had rolled. Next card I want to draw attention to is Hinata, just for their weapon assist. Yes, it does have a 35-turn cooldown, but with 2 skill boosts, it does make it so it's a little tiny bit easier to come up. But it's 400 million damage to a single enemy 5 times. So multiple enemies would kill multiple enemies potentially. But it's amazing because Super Resolve can be bypassed here if the spawn has 2.4 billion HP or less with a 50% Super Resolve, because 3 pings brings it to 50%, 3 more pings kills it. I said 2.4 billion because that's the threshold need. You can do 1.2 billion 3 times, get the 50% super resolve, do it a few more times, it's going to die. Incredibly strong for button farming, great in co-op because that's a very long cooldown, 35 turns. If you roll it, you're going to be happy when you want to button through stuff. Next is Shizu, and they are a strong void, damage void option for mono fire teams because on a 6-turn cooldown, they give 2 turns of damage penetration, 2 turns of an attack buff, and their damage cap does increase, while also removing a single turn of barriers or shields. Again, coming back to the notion of shields possibly becoming a big problem in the future, she kind of hedges yourself against that, while also being able to deal respectable damage with potentially 5-10 combos or 4-10 combos and the 50% stat increase, or 4-10 combos with the double 3x3. It's a possible option, never a bad thing to have. Weapon assist wise, it's just 2 turns of haste, so it's not particularly exciting unless you care about levitation without bulk. For Gobta, they look comical. I chuckled when I saw them. But as far as bottom rarity goes, they're one of the best bottom rarity cards that I've seen in a prolonged period of time. They do have 2 L's, so they can put back your assist, but they're a looping shield on a 7-turn cooldown for 7 turns of 35% damage reduction, and they also give a cleric effect on top of that. So obviously you want to not necessarily be spamming your looping shield unnecessarily, because, well, you want to use your looping shield every time it's available, but then you may run the risk of your cleric not being up, so you may need a backup cleric, or maybe they are your cleric that just puts up a shield and you weren't running a looping shield otherwise. It's just nice to have these options, and the fact that it is a bottom rarity means there's a good chance you do roll them if you do roll this event a modest amount of times. Point of the matter is, for a bottom rarity card, I think they're incredibly strong. For Shuna, they are another clericing option if you did not roll Frey, but they have incredible overlap with Halloween Shiraki, except they have a 6-turn as opposed to a 4-turn cooldown, so that's a big difference, but she does have better stats, more health, less attack, more RCV, the stats you care about, and they have essentially identical awakenings, amusingly enough, except for Halloween Shiranaki does have 2 extra L's, so she puts back your assist a little bit faster, but active skill-wise, it does give a 7x6 board, which can fix those problems, and it does 1 turn avoiding all dark damage, which is highly situational, but who knows, maybe it will come out being useful at some point in time in the future, while also being a cleric. With that being said, you still can definitely utilize them as a cleric if you need to try and utilize collaboration-based cards. And then, with that being said, I feel like those are all the cards that I felt were truly noteworthy and stand out from this rare machine. Like, it's definitely hinging around the fact that you have 2 incredibly powerful teams that you can build for that need potentially duplicates of themselves or duplicates of other cards or just lots of cards in this event overall. So if you don't think you can be lucky enough to roll these cards, or you can't roll enough times to at least have a statistical chance of acquiring them, I don't think it's necessarily worth rolling in. For myself on Mantastic'c, I didn't roll in this event beyond my free pulls because I realized that with 100-ish stones, I'll never pull enough of the good stuff, and I have Excalibur anyway, so I can just live on Excalibur. Like I said, power creep usually goes up by small-ish amounts, and you tend to get the most value when you wait and then jump ahead by like skipping multiple events potentially. So I did that in Gung Ho Alternate Journey for Mantastic'c. Mantastic's kind of awkward. I'm just kind of using like Guten still, and it's like, nowhere near as good as these leaders I can feel already. But point of the matter is, this event is strong if you can get lucky and or roll deep enough to get enough cards to actually utilize the badge by picking up Rimuru and Veldora to get that badge. But with that being said, let me know what you lovely ladies and gentlemen think about this event in the comments section down below. Do you think it's actually worth rolling? And if you did roll, did it turn out great? And what kind of teams were you able to put together? Regardless of all that, hopefully all you lovely ladies and gentlemen have a truly fantastic day. I wish best luck in your own pad adventures, and happy puzzling.